We hold these truths to be self-evident.
It's not a rerun if you do a new intro. This is Wrestling World Domination Remastered.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling World Domination Remastered. My name is Bob Hazelwood. This is episode number 6, featuring the interview we did with Chris Youngblood. It originally aired on July 11th, 2014. Chris is probably best known for his tag team with his brother Mark, both as the Youngbloods and the Renegade Warriors. He is the son of Amarillo wrestling legend Ricky Romero and brother of the late Jay Youngblood. As always, I'll be back at the end of the show with an update on Chris, and perhaps we'll be giving away fabulous prizes. Or perhaps not. You'll just have to wait and see. But for now, let's get right to the show.
Chris Youngblood, Chris Romero is his real name. I met him in Dallas, and I couldn't tell you what year it was, but Chris, one of the guys that he and his brother Mark both were absolute pleasures to be around. You knew they were going to give 100% and have a great match every night. In the dressing room, Chris talked a little more than Mark did. Mark was a little bit quiet, and Chris was always the jokester. And, these guys, they have been all over the world. They went to Japan a lot. They wrestled in Puerto Rico. They wrestled for the old NWA or WCW. They grew up in West Texas. Like I said, their father was a wrestler, and not only Chris and Mark, but they had another brother, Jay, that was a really accomplished wrestler, and we lost Jay, way too soon. Chris is someone that I saw back in February, and I'm really excited to have him on tonight.
Well, with that, we will be bringing on Chris Youngblood right now. Ladies and gentlemen, the fabulous Chris Youngblood.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Chris, how are you, my buddy?
Man, doing great, Terry. Like you said, I see you not too long ago in February, and that was just a tremendous reunion. I got to see a lot of the other boys from back in the Dallas days, and a couple of them from Japan, like Stan Hansen and James Beard, who's been international as well. And I heard some of the accolades that you were talking about before you brought me on the show, and man, I really appreciate you. Being that fondly about our family. I was brought into this business, a second generation wrestler, and man, I've had a terrific life, somewhat different than most people. And I'm going to probably ramble on a little bit, but you can cut me off whenever you want to.
No, man, I want to hear it, and our listeners want to hear the stories, please.
Well, growing up son of a professional wrestler back in the 70s. My father's Rapid Ricky Romero. He was a huge name in the Funks territory up in Amarillo. They hit Amarillo, Colorado, well, actually the Texas Panhandle, Colorado, New Mexico, and various parts of the Southwest. And being able to be a son of a professional wrestler, and he was the top babyface. I was reading some of the accomplishments in The Observer when he died in 2006. And, he was one of the few wrestlers that was able to stay in the territory for over 30 years. Back in the day, you were lucky if you survived for 6 months. There was times on the road I didn't get to see my father for, he would be on the road. Back then, it was probably about 320 days out of the year. But we would go with him on trips to various towns. And, my mother played a big part. A lot of people go, they ask me, they say, well, yeah, your father this, your father that. My mother was the backbone also in the family because she had to raise us while he was on the road. But sitting in class, and we grew up because my father was a hard worker. He was brought into Amarillo, the territory, by Dory Funk Sr. himself. And it's kind of funny, and I'll briefly go over this, but my father came to work at a tournament for Paul Bosch back in, 1958, I think. And back then, I think the payoff was maybe $500. So he loaded up his Chevy. He had one of these hot rod cars and made a little wooden platform in the back for some of the kids to sleep. They had 4 kids at the time. My oldest brother, Ricky Jr., my sister Yolanda, my brother Steve, or Jay Youngblood, and Melissa, my sister. And they traveled all the way from California, San Bernardino area, because he worked at the Olympic Auditorium in California. Well, he drove all the way from there to make this, grand purse. And when he was there, he worked his match and everything. And he goes to get his payoff from Paul Bosch. Well, you could imagine back then it was a lot different business, and it's kind of, smoky, dark room with a light kind of swinging above the guy with the payout and everything. And my dad goes to get his money, and a hand grabs him, pulls him away from his money, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "Kid," you want to multiply that by probably about 40 or 50? And he's like, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, if you follow me down the road and just take my advice," he says, I'll make you a superstar in this business, and I'll make you a lot of money." Well, down the road just happened to be about 650 miles from Houston, Texas, all the way up to Amarillo. It was Dory Funk Sr.
Wow.
He told my father, he says, I don't want you to go back home to California, come up to my territory. He called ahead, had my dad a house in Sunrise District of Amarillo. When they got there, 14 hours later, next thing you know, he put my dad in small towns around Amarillo, because back then, my dad told the story really well. Back then, there was still a lot of color issues about people, and, like one time he told me that he would go to some of the matches, and they had a restroom for whites and a restroom for blacks. Well, my dad was a Hispanic wrestling star. We had Spanish blood and of course, Mexican. And anyway, he came, people would come up to him and go, like especially the Mexican nationals, they'd come up to him, Ricky, the bathroom say, they'd say this in Spanish, the bathroom say white, the bathroom says colored. Where do we go? He goes, "Oh, go like me. I go outside." So, there was barriers back then. And see, Dory Funk Sr. was, go like me, I go outside. So, there was barriers, Terry, back then. And my father, being in a predominantly white area of the United States, was basically put in this position because there was a lot of migrant workers that came up from Mexico that worked the fields back in the summer and spring. Right. So my father spoke fluent Spanish, and he was, a hell of a talker. And anyway, Dory put him in these small towns around Amarillo for about 6 months to a year. And my father's like, you're taking care of me. I appreciate you. And he took him under his wing like a father. Dory did. My dad lost his father when he was 15 years old, had to raise his family, his kids, brothers and sisters and stuff like that. Dory took him under his wing. They had a big match set up, a tag team match, I think against the Von Brauners or somebody like that. And it was going to be a tag team match and this and that. So at the Amarillo Sports Arena, it was, Dory came out to the ring and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got a new hot star tonight. He's going to be my tag partner. You ever seen him? Da-da-da-da-da." And so he was out in the middle of the ring talking. He goes, "But I know you guys came to see the tag team match against Von Brauners." He goes, "I don't want to let you know we're not going to have this tag team match tonight. We're going to have a match, and it's going to be a good match, probably the best match you'll see all night." He said, "It's going to be me, Dory Funk Sr., against Rapid Ricky Romero." And my father went out there with Dory, and Dory did all kinds of stuff with my dad. My dad went over. He won the match. And it
wow.
took him, and if you can imagine, Dory Funk Sr. in 1958 was like Elvis 1967 or 68. I mean, it was such a huge accomplishment to be able to be put over and catapulted up into the status of the stars like he was overnight. And Dory had so much trust and so much hope in this young kid that he pushed him through the roof, and he was able to stay there for 30 years. And he took up my family from Southern California, replanted in Amarillo, Texas, and that's how we got into business. I got into business. I grew up. Most kids, it's funny because we grew up in a predominantly white upper class neighborhood. My dad made tons of money. We lived in a nice neighborhood, and I was kind of upper crust, what have you. But
right.
I was only the brown skinned kid in probably, a 20-mile radius. And in school, the funny thing about it is some kids would say, hey, you know what? Your dad's a wrestler. Oh, he's a faker. Oh, he's one of those guys. Oh, yeah, he does this and that for money. And would put me down. I said, you know what? And these are doctors and lawyers' kids and top-notch people, the base kids and all this stuff, Army kids. And anyway, I looked at the kids and I go, you know what? Yeah, but my dad makes more money than your dad does. And he's on TV every week. And, it shut him up. And, I had that attitude from as a kid. We would have countless miles on the road. My dad would buy a car every year because they traveled so much and they put so much miles that he had to flip the car every year because of the mileage. And
right. There was no flying back then. Some of those trips were 500 miles, weren't they? You did the loops, but it was brutal.
It was brutal. And, what's funny is I remember to this day of climbing, when we had the other kids in the car, climbing in the back, not the back seat, but the back window of the Grand Prix and looking up at the stars and sleeping and seeing my breath up against the window and traveling countless miles from, the loop then was from Amarillo. They'd do TV on Saturday morning, and then the wrestlers would carry a tape from town to town because they could show it, on their local show. Then we'd do Colorado Springs, which was, 350 miles on Saturday night. Sunday was Albuquerque, another 300 miles. They'd show a tape on there, have huge crowds, huge show. He was a big draw there. A lot of Hispanics and Native Americans. The Native Americans loved my father. A lot of them blessed him and put him into. Now, of course, a lot of people ask me and question the Native Americanism in my family, where that comes from. My mother's last name was Sangre Hogan, which translates out to Youngblood. A lot of people didn't know that. So that's where we get our heritage of Apache Mescalero. My mother was from that area of the country. So, we have the best of both worlds. But anyway, he would go Albuquerque, then another 300 miles on Monday for Gory Guerrero, which was, Eddie, Hector, Chavo, their dad. He would go work El Paso, and there was huge crowds of Hispanics there. And then on Tuesday, it was Odessa. It was another 300 miles to Odessa, and then Lubbock was on Wednesday, and then back home Thursday to home base in Amarillo. And this went for 20 years. This man traveled that, and then, we would go with him, and we would all fight in the car. Who's going to get Dad's jacket? Who's going to get Dad's jacket? Of course, Jay would always, trip us or whatever, push us down and hurry up and run out there, and he loved it. He was... out of all of us, and give credit where credit's due, he was just a supreme talent in the business. He was
phenomenal worker. Phenomenal
worker, phenomenal person in outside of the ring. He was just tremendous, and I favored him a lot. And we were really close, out of the brothers and stuff, even though I'm still close with my brothers, and I've always have been. But Jay and I kind of, I always looked up to him, and I was always, there, we were sidekicks. He would take me everywhere when I was a kid, and I'd catch him smoking and stuff like that. And my parents would get on his ass because I would squill on it. I go, yeah, and he would say, kind of kayfabe, take it easy. Don't talk. Don't turn me in on mom and dad. So else you're not going to go with me anymore. So, you know,
lucky you didn't whip your ass.
Exactly. But, you know, I got to see his career evolve. You know, he started off in the Amarillo area, very young age, 17 years old. My dad had us all in the ring. I was 13 years old, my first match in Juarez, Mexico. And what had happened, it was all a mistake. I was helping him train guys in our backyard. We didn't have a swing set. We didn't have a swimming pool. But by goddamn, we had a damn wrestling ring. And everybody from miles around would drive down the alley just to see us work out. And, you know, we're out there, and I'm a 13-year-old kid, but I'm as tall as I was now then. You know, I was the same height, a lot of pounds less probably. But, you know, I was able to go out there. My dad would make us, you know, train these guys. He's like, oh, you can't go and hang out with your friends on Saturday. You know, you're wanting to go hang out and get in trouble and all that bullshit. And he said, you know, he goes, no, you got to stay here, son, and you're going to help train these guys. I said, but Dad, so I'd get out there and push around with these guys, you know, take a headlock, tackle, drop down, hip toss, you know, arm drag, things like that. So finally, he kind of looked at me and he goes, and this is kind of reverting back to Jay's days. Jay came out when he was 17, and my father, they played a little mind game with the crowd. He came out as a wrestler, and he had a mask, kind of like a Mexican wrestler named Youngbloods. And it was a silver mask with this black kind of like shroud around his face, and he had the silver, but there's kind of an inside meaning to what his name was, and they called him the Silver Streak. Now, a lot of people that know us and know our family, we all had a silver streak in our hair. Mark had a little bit. I had it. My son Skylar has it. Jay had it. My brother Ricky has a lot of it. My sister Melissa had it. It's in our family. It's a bloodline through my mother, and it traces back down to Geronimo, actually. But anyway, they came in and he said, you know, we're Silver Streak, and he's Silver Streak, and he wore this mask and everything. And he got to tag with my father. Well, they ended up winning the Western States Tag Team Championships. You know, I think it was Tully. It might have been Tully and Gino. Somebody had it at the time. And they pushed him, and the people they wanted to know, was this Ricky's son? And my dad, you know, he was old school and everything. You know, no, he's not my son. Yeah, he still want to be 28. You know, and he's like, oh, he's too old to be my son and all this shit. So anyway, they won, and they put a little mind game to the people. And this was Jay's idea. He went and he got a cast. He went and got some plaster of Paris, put it on his leg, because people were starting to question, now, is this Steve Romero, or is this, who is this guy? And so he went, this was in Lubbock. He went in front of all the people and TV cameras, all this stuff, and he sat out in the crowd with crutches and a cast. Well, during the matches, this and that, whatever, he'd get up for popcorn, this and that, walk around, this and that, whatever. But people didn't know it. He cut a slit down the side of the cast, and he could pop it off. And he would go and he would work the match. He'd leave his crutches on the chair, like or on the side or something, his coke and this and that, and walk around the building, this and that. And people are looking in the crowd, well, where is he? This guy's out there wrestling, but Steve's got a cast. They didn't know that you could do that with a cast. They thought you could only get one from a doctor, and they played that rib on the crowd, and people didn't know it. They didn't know to believe it.
Man, that is great. That is a great story. Jesus. I got to see countless, Terry, I got to see countless matches. One of my favorite highlight matches of back in that era, and then I'm going to pull through and kind of come up to the days of when we work and stuff, but it sticks out in my mind a lot. There's two different ones, but Briscoe, and God bless Jack Briscoe. He was my man. I got the opportunity to meet him at the CAC, the Cali Flower convention, right, before he passed. And man, I was like, because he was my hero growing up. He was the biggest heel. When he was a heel, he was the best heel.
And that sucker could work. He could put you in any kind of move. He could talk. He just had that something about him before Flair and all those guys, that pristine, just when he walked in the building, and I was just like, if this is Jack Briscoe, and I was like, shit, crapping my pants, like, oh man, this is Jack Briscoe. And he goes, Chris Youngblood? And I go, yes, sir, at the convention, right? Oh, come here. Oh, and he gave me a big old hug. I love Jay, Mark, and you know what? He made me sit by him the whole convention, and we ate, and we drank, and we talked, and we had just, being able to be taken in that situation with such a great person, and especially such an icon in this business, is just phenomenal. But anyway, there was a match back when I was a kid against my father and Jack Briscoe in Lubbock, and it was kind of an accidental dusty finish, I think. What happened was they were working a match, and it was a sold-out crowd, and this place, the Fair Park Coliseum in Lubbock, Texas, and sold-out capacity. I mean, this place held maybe 5 to 10 grand people. So they're out there working matches, and the people are going crazy. There was a man that actually had a heart attack and died during the match, and the people didn't do nothing. They dragged the guy out in the back. Even the paramedics were watching the match. They just kind of left. They knew he was dead, but they just left him there.
Holy hell! Yeah. That's when you know you're getting the people with you, right?
Oh yeah, that's when you know you're over. So anyway,
I've never heard of it.
The match is going on, and bing, 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 and all of a sudden, my dad's schoolboy is Jack Briscoe in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3, and it was a title match.
Oh,
and
wow.
People went berserk. They went berserk. My dad came back to the dressing room. I was back there. We were all jumping for joy. I got to hold the belt, this and that, whatever. And then I don't know what happened, but they reversed it. They reversed. I don't know if they did it overnight, how that happened back then. It's kind of blurry in my mind. But even Jack remembered that story, and he was like, yeah, he goes, I think that was a fuck up. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, a screw up.
Oh, man, you can say whatever you want.
Okay, good.
Say whatever
anyway, yeah. So he and we jumped for joy. We were all crazy, this and that. And, anyway, the next one, a guy named, I don't know if y'all remember this guy, Cyclone Negro.
Absolutely.
He was a Venezuelan national, very good worker, good body on him. I mean, he was, battle, and he'd talk Spanish and get the people crowded. Just, he was probably the biggest villain my dad had worked programs with. Well, they were working in Lubbock, Texas, same place, and the crowds, all this and that, but it was a $5,000 silver dollar match. I don't know why. I think Terry came up with this funk, and they put the money in these big old bags, and they were silver dollars, $5,000 worth. Well, anyway, something happened, whatever. There was a big finish. My dad, he beat Cyclone Negro. He grabs the money, and he puts his hand in it, and he starts throwing silver dollars out to people. I mean, I'm talking about not just here and there. He emptied 4 or 5 bags. And
wow!
Yeah. I mean, all out to the people. All out to the people, and people. They come out, people come to me sometimes. I was in Lubbock recently, and they're like, I still got a silver dollar that threw out, and I'm like, going, wow, really? Wow, that's amazing. But, that was a good program. That's stuff they don't do nowadays, and it drew crowds, and it drew people, and it's kind of like a fan appreciation. Dory Funk Sr. was ahead of his time. He came up with names for a lot of the wrestlers. Rufus R. Jones. He came up with Rapid Ricky Romero. He came up with Hank James. I mean, wow. I think Bobby Jaggers. I mean, there was a lot of guys that he put names and tags on because his territory, he wanted to build it. He built it with characters. He was doing stuff Vince was doing, when Vince was still shit and yellow. Dory was, he was so advanced in the business that it was amazing some of the stuff that he did. And I got a plethora, a menu of all these guys that would come through that territory, like Abdullah the Butcher and Siegfried Stanky and Bob Backlund, The scariest heel that I grew up watching ever, and I finally got to meet him, and I love his son dearly. He's a close friend of mine. Was King Curtis Iakia. I mean, King Curtis.
King Curtis.
The King would scare the living shit out of you. I mean, when he came out, he would do the kind of like the Brute Bernard, like ooh, 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 you know, and what later on Brody ended up, you know, doing. And all that. But he would come through the crowd. He wouldn't come down the aisle like everybody else. It looked like, you know, them fold-up chairs looked like popcorn popping in the damn Jiffy Pop thing, flying in the air. You know, you're like going, hell, where's the guy at? And pretty soon he's in your face, and, you know, he had all these cuts on his head, and he just didn't have the greatest body in the world, but that some bitch could talk and he could work. And, you know, Jack Briscoe, King Curtis, you know, there was in the Funks. I mean, I was there the day they were filming a deal with Terry Funk, and Terry Funk, so I've got a brand new Silverado pickup back in the day. And coming from West Texas, we're rednecks, and, you know, you got a Silverado pickup, that's, you know, you're going to kick, you know, your wife out before you lose your Silverado, you know. And Terry Funk's on TV. He's doing an interview from Florida or somewhere, and I'm out there with the video crew watching him cut this promo. Well, he starts putting his boots to it. He kicks it in and hits it, and, you know, and just his interviews were just amazing. But, you know, I had a huge, like I said, a plethora of these guys that came through that territory. J.J. Dillon, the Infernos. I mean, I'm going back, you know, years, but, you know, Flair would come through, Andre the Giant. Chuck Norris used to come watch the matches with the guy, the karate guy that was from Amarillo. I mean, we had just, you know, it was just, we got to see the cream of the crop would come through Amarillo. And I was able to see everybody's work style, everybody, you know, and it was funny because we would all like be driving down the road or something. I'm not going to name any names.
No, please, we don't want to do that.
No. We would say, as you know, in our family, when we're driving down the road, and I'd say, Dad, and I was a kid. I didn't want to say the word, but I was like, so-and-so, you know what? He's the shit. You know? I couldn't push. Why are they pushing him, Dad? You know?
And how old were you?
I was probably 9, 10. You know? I mean, it was, you know, I was. You know,
I wonder your mom didn't in the hell out of you, right?
Exactly. You know, I'm like, Dad, God, that guy's, he's awful. You know, they need to put him lower on the card and shit. My dad goes, yeah, son, I know. You know.
Well, that's a wrestler's son there. Chris, I'm going to tell you real quick, I don't want to cut you off on anything. This is some great stuff, and I want to hear more. But we got some callers that are holding. They've been holding for a while. I want to say hi to Kim from Hudson, New York. She wanted me to say hi to her. We got I don't want to drop calls because I know that sometimes they're waiting. So can we bring a few on and have some questions for you?
In fact, we've got Kim on the air right now.
Great.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
Terry and Chris.
Oh, I'm doing okay, Terry. I'm hanging in there. And hi, Chris. How you doing?
How you doing?
New York accent.
I'm not from the city. I'm from the Adirondacks. I'm from a place called. I'm from Hudson Falls. I'm from right in the middle of the Adirondacks. I live like right near Lake George. So
in God's country, it's beautiful up there. Gosh, I'd love to go up there sometime. I've been
to the Poconos, man. It is gorgeous.
Oh yes, it is. I've had the pleasure of seeing I've seen a couple wrestling matches in my lifetime. I got to go see the WWF when it came to Glens Falls one year, and I met some of the wrestlers that do the amateur circuit. And where did I meet? Oh, I met them at my very first comic book convention in 2010. And it was kind of funny because I went dressed as there's a book I'm in the process of trying to write, and my title character's a monster hunter, and she's a former Marine. So it was kind of funny, but I can't remember what character this guy was, and I can't think of his name. But I was walking away, and he decided to be a wise guy. And he made a comment to me, and I turned around and got in his face, and I got in the character, and I said, "Are you talking to me, Slime Bucket?"
I've never had to anybody.
And he just stood there, and all the color left his face. In other words, I just looked him right square in the eye. Yeah, exactly.
Kim, honey, I don't mean to cut you out, but we're real short on time, and we got some other callers.
Okay.
Did you have a question or anything for Chris or myself?
I just want to say good luck to you, Chris, and I hope I'll see you in some future events down the road.
Definitely. I'll be there someday.
Okay, well, you take care, guys.
Thanks a lot.
No problem.
You can hang on the line and listen if you want.
Okay.
Next caller, Bob. Who we got?
All right, we got Ryan from Maryland. Ryan, you're on the air with Chris.
Ryan is a regular caller. Ryan, you're on with Chris Youngblood. You got a question for Chris?
My question for Chris is, who do you think was the most racist wrestler towards Native Americans in wrestling?
Oh, the most racist person? I think character-wise, probably, more than anything, I would say Greg Valentine. I mean, because the program that he ran with Wahoo McDaniels back in the Mid-Atlantic really, really drew some sparks. I mean, his interviews and stuff really hit center with Native Americans, because even though Valentine, was kind of slow talker and barely get his words out, he got so much heat because of the things that he did say. I watched some of the tapes, and I just watched them the other day of the Mid-Atlantic back in the 80s, and he had a lot of heat. I mean, he had tremendous heat with Native Americans. And when you speak of Native American wrestlers, Wahoo McDaniels, he was probably the ultimate all-time figure in that particular spot. And I'll tell you, the second one that had a lot of heat with Native Americans, and he also worked with Wahoo, was Tully Blanchard. And that was in Texas, the Texas area, the Southwest. If you watch some of the Southwest Championship Wrestling, you see some of the interviews. I mean, stuff like, he'd call him blanket ass and, we'd go drink some fire water and, things like that you couldn't dare say on TV nowadays. I mean, it was really, over the edge and just really, it was before its time. But I would say those two guys probably got the better interviews and the best of that type of heat because of what they did. Now, I'm saying their characters, most of the guys usually didn't believe like that, but, in order for them to get over and get the point across to the crowd, they had to stir up a little controversy, but overall, you want me to tell you who the most racist person was? And he was the nicest guy in the world. And he got a lot of flack from different races and everything else, was Killer Carl Cox.
Oh,
and this
yeah.
guy, Cox could work, he could talk, and he would go out of his way and pull ribs, and he would, you look, I could probably say this on the show, but you look, and he had a T-shirt, I seen it the other day on somewhere, and it was Killer Carl Cox on his shirt, but he had 3 Ks on it. That was, could you do that on TV today? Hell no.
That's way before its time, and that's some heat there.
Exactly. It is, but, he kind of had that, that look to him, to where you just want to slap the shit out of him, but he could work. He was a tough guy.
Oh, he could work his ass off, man. He was a great heel. A great heel. And I've seen stuff of him in Japan. What a worker he was. And nice guy. He was a super guy.
Oh, yeah. Super guy. He came out of his way. I was scared to meet him. I met him at one of these wrestling conventions, and I was like going, oh, shit. Because I'm looking at this guy, and I'm not going, hey, he looks like that, he looks like that actor, not De Niro, but Robert Duvall. Kind of like Robert Duvall had that look to him, and you kind of, I was like, going, this guy's going to be a salty asshole. And I was like going, oh, shit, here I go. And I go up to him, oh, Ricky's son, hey, come here. Gave me a big old hug. here's some pictures. Take these back to your dad. Here's some of Jay. Here's this, here's that. And, you know, I was like, dude, I grew up watching you, and I thought you were the sorriest motherfucker there was. You were mean. You were hateful. You got so much heat. But no, yeah, I mean, I would say those guys would be in that category. That would be the ones for me. Now, I don't know about, you know, a lot of it isn't played out anymore. I think at that time and era you could get away with it, but it doesn't happen anymore.
Ryan, that's a great question. Do you have another quick one? Because we've got more callers on the line, buddy.
Okay, my final question is, who was your favorite Native American wrestler to do a match with, if you ever did one?
Oh gosh. You know, I'm going to be biased about that. I mean, of course, I never ever got the opportunity to, and I have dreams about it, and I dream about him every day, and that would have been Jay Youngblood.
Jay Youngblood, absolutely, man. Wahoo McDaniel was certainly great. You know, I've worked on cards, and he worked against my partner and chopped the living piss out of him. But Youngblood had that fire and that, man, he was phenomenal.
I would say Jay and Wahoo, because I got a tag with my brother Mark. Mark's a hell of a worker as well, but those would be the ones that I would choose.
All right, man. Ryan, thanks. You're always a great caller with great questions. Hang on the phone with us and listen, and keep calling, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Got one more quick one that we can get in. I'm sorry if there's any more than that, but
well, we got from Alabama. It's been hanging on for quite a while. We'll bring him on. Dennis, you're on with Chris and Terry.
Hey,
Dennis, what's going on, my friend? You got a question for Chris?
Yeah, I have a question for Chris. I was going to ask you, who is your favorite wrestling announcer of all time, and who is your least favorite?
Oh, God, that's a great question. Really? Because that is just, gosh, you know, there's just so many that were out there that were a lot different styles. I mean, I'm thinking in my mind right now, I'm thinking of Gordon Sully, Bob Caudle. There was a guy named Steve Stacks that was out of Amarillo in Southwest Championship Wrestling. Right. And, you know, there was just a plethora of announcers that were, you know, what was the guy in Dallas, Terry? Bill Mercer.
Bill Mercer or Mark Lawrence.
Or Mark Lawrence. You know, there was a lot of guys that were great announcers. I'll tell you who brought a pristine to the business in an earlier time and everything. I believe, and he was an announcer, I guess, but they would stand in the ring and everything with, I guess it was Jimmy Lennon, the guy that, you know, that did the Olympic, and he was kid's like some big time guy.
Right.
I think he was a heck of an announcer. I think a color commentator would have to be probably Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan was cool, quick-witted, but as far as an announcer, I think all time, my favorite, and I hate to say this because I grew up on a heavy dial at WTBS, and it's Gordon Sully. And he would get your attention. And let me tell a quick story about Gordon Sully. This is funny. Gordon's a hell of a guy, and you know, and he's known my family forever, and this and that, and yada yada yada. And Gordon, like the rest of us, you know, he likes to drink. You know, we all do. We had good times and had fun, this and that. And we're standing in line at WCW at Center Stage in Atlanta, and we're all having to do drug tests. Well, we're standing in line. I think I'm behind. It was Sid Vicious was in front of Gordon Sully, and then it was me and Mark. Yeah, you imagine that crew. Rotundo was there, a bunch of guys. Anyway, we're in line. And all of a sudden we see, but who walks by? Flair. See you later, guys. God, I got to miss my drug test. And he looks over at us. I'm going to go hang out with Jesse Helms, Senator of South Carolina or somewhere. And I'm like, well, what the? Well, how's Flair getting out of this deal? So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden Gordon Sully turns around and goes, yeah, he goes, if they, you know the way he talks, yeah, if they piss test me, all they're going to find is a screwdriver in my piss. And I thought for a second, I go, he just got off the airplane. he just got off the airplane, and he's there right in front of us. And I thought for a second, is that a wrestling term? Because I was kind of green. Is that a wrestling term, or what the? And I go, he's like, they're gonna find a screwdriver in my piss. And I just started busting out. You just had him a vodka and orange juice, huh? Yeah, exactly. When I found out, man, that is great story. He's standing there with his tie on and his suit, you know the way, and he's fixing his tie while he's saying this, and I'm like going, holy shit, this is amazing. We're in line, and then I look up and Sid Vicious is chomping on it. It wasn't a lamb chop. It was kind of like some kind of white steak thing he ate, but it was for muscle guys, them guys that like to work out bodybuild. And he's sitting there chomping on it, and it's coming off his lip and on the ground all over him, and had his shirt off and everything. He turned around and looked at us like, what the fuck, when he heard that too. But we all busted up laughing. I think Gordon Soley's my favorite all time, always.
Great question, man.
Karen from San Antonio, you are on the air with Terry and Chris.
Hi, Terry and Chris.
Hey, Karen, how are you? How are you, sweetie? Good to hear from you as always.
I am so great. I was there a lot of the time when, in the good old bad old days when we went up and down the road so many times, driving the Freebirds a lot of the time and taking care of business. Yeah. Those guys are a hoot to travel with, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Oh, yeah.
Travel with and a hoot to be around. Huh?
Well, Michael showed up at the CAC this year, but he didn't stay around to talk to anybody. He had to get in and out. So, but I did want to say, you had mentioned Greg Valentine. Sad thing about Greg is while he was there at CAC, he got notification that his daughter had passed away.
Oh, my God.
And my heart goes out to his family.
Yeah.
I was friends with Johnny, and I hate that.
Yeah, so, there were a couple of things that were going on. But I hope you guys make it, or you can make it over to CAC next year. It's the 50th anniversary.
I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm planning on going, Karen. I've been talking to people, and Chris, you're going, you said?
I'm going to jump in your back pocket, Terry, and we're going to go.
Well, buddy, I'm flying on a plane, so
there you go.
I'll have them trip down over Texas, and you jump on the wing.
There you go. No, I wanted to go this year. My father a few years ago got an honorary award there, and it's really not about that. I just go to see the boys. It's fun, especially those guys, the guys that that were pioneers and, bridged the way for us, to make it over in this business. And I just go pay my respects. And I love going. I've been a couple of times with my father a few years back. But I really wanted to go this year. I talked to Terry Funk probably about 2 weeks ago, and he called me up, and because we have a mutual friend, and I hadn't talked to him in a while. And he asked me, he goes, are you going to go this year? And due to what I'm doing right now, the career that I'm in, I'm on the road a lot, and I can't leave my post. I got to stay where I'm at. I'm currently just right down the road from you, ma'am. I'm in actually Killeen, Texas.
Oh, great.
And,
yeah.
So you want to go have dinner or what?
Are you available?
We'll give you Karen's number after the show. But
there you go.
Man, we've got questions from the chat room. Karen, I'm sorry. We're up against on time.
Okay.
Thanks for calling in, Kitty.
I'll see y'all later.
Bye, babe.
Bye-bye.
You haven't changed a bit, and you keep me laughing.
Terry, this is the way I am. I'm always like this, dude.
I know. That's what I was saying before you came on, man. You were just in the dressing room. You kept us in stitches. You kept it light. Mark was more quiet, but hell, y'all were both just phenomenal workers. You knew that when y'all had a match, it was going to be tear the house down.
Hey everyone, I hope you'll pardon this interruption, but I wanted to offer a little something special to those folks who are actually listening to the show. Between now and July 5th, 2020, you can enter to win a copy of Jim Ross's book, Under the Black Hat. To enter, send an email to randombrainnetwork@gmail.com with the subject, I want to win the prize. On July 6th, we'll hold a drawing from all entries and contact the winner for shipping information. Again, that email address is randombrainnetwork@gmail.com. And the entry deadline is 11:59 p.m. Central Daylight Time, July 5th, 2020. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to the show.
Bob, what's the question from the chat room, brother?
Yeah, the question is, did you get any heat with Native Americans for doing the Pronto heel character with Skandar Akbar?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, this is what happened. Gary Young and I, they tagged us up. I think it was either Jarrett, whoever was booking at the time, in USWA. Eric Embry. They tagged us up. And we were kind of low card, mediocre, working our stuff and everything. Well, I came up with the idea of doing a gimmick with Jimmy Jack Funk, which is Jesse Barr. And I noticed, you know, he wore the little eye mask and all this other stuff and yada, yada, yada. Well, I approached Jarrett and Eric Embry and I said, hey, me and Gary Young aren't really, you know, we're not doing nothing. We need to do something to spice up our gimmick. So we ran an angle to where we jumped Jimmy Jack Funk, and we stole his mask. And so Gary Young put it on his head, and it made him the Texas Ranger. And when I approached him, I said, okay, we got the Texas Ranger kind of guy and Tonto. But I didn't know they were going to say Pronto. Call me Pronto, and they're going to change the gimmick to that point. I show up at the matches, I'm like going, oh shit, the reservation's going to kick my ass. And, you know, so I go in the boardroom and everything. I'm like, okay, what's this on the card? I look at it and I slam it down. And I think Ed Watts, one of the guys that was running the shows around, he was a promoter. I worked for... he ran shows for years for World Class. He had the Lawton show and a lot of big shows where Ed Watts. Yes. Anyway, he grabbed me and he goes, kid, I know you're pissed off. He goes, don't fuck him up. He goes, you're going to get fired. I said, what the hell? I was going, what the hell is Pronto? And they looked at me and they go, well, that's what you came up. That's your idea. I said, no, guys. I said, yeah, it was to steal Jimmy Jack Funk's mask and put that heat on us, and we could be called the, you know, whatever, Long Ranger and Chris Youngblood. I don't know. The Texas Ranger and Chris Youngblood. So anyway, they got it all screwed up. They did the gimmick, whatever. And the next thing I know, I'm at home. And what's funny thing about it is my phone, and Terry knows this too, I've had a million phones and phone numbers, and it's just because this happens. But anyway, I get a phone call. And this wasn't no cell phone call or nothing like that. I get a phone call at my house. And it's from Mescalero Indian tribe. And it was some friends of ours that are from there. And they were like going, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, nothing. What's going on? So we got talking and everything. I said, hey, we backed and we were behind you when, you worked in WCW as, the Youngbloods, and we've always enjoyed this, and your father, da-da-da-da-da-da. But you're kind of stepping over boundaries and things and what you're doing now. And, and I've always had respect. I always had respect because that's where my mom came from. That's my native blood and all this other stuff. And I told them, and I basically realistically told them, say, look, wrestling's a business. It's like anything else out there. We're here to make money. I got to feed my kids. I don't mean any disrespect. It's not me. I'm not going to go, I'm not going to go purposely out there and disrespect my native blood and the native heritage because they're great people. And they're what America's based on. I said, I'm going to run with this character a little bit. We'll see how it flies. It'll run its course, and people will forget about it, But here I am 20-something years later, and you brought up this question.
Yeah. People don't forget, do they?
They don't forget. But, I got some heat. But I'll tell you what I got more heat about, and you're never going to believe this.
What?
We were working WCW, and we were in Center Stage, Atlanta, and we're working our match, and we're doing TV, and yada, 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 and, what is it, David Crockett's brother, he was the cameraman. Anyway, he's out there in front of the deal, whatever. So I go over to the fans, and, I do my into the crowd and whatever. And then I start doing, because I was watching, I'm not a baseball freak, but I follow it, and it's sad that the Rangers are sucking right now. But anyway, I go out there and I start doing the tomahawk chop because of Atlanta Braves.
Right.
I'm thinking, well, Ted Turner owns some of it, and this is all cool, this and that. I started the tomahawk chop, and holy shit, I got so much shit for that, because at the time, the National Council of Native Americans, something, didn't admire the fact that I was doing the tomahawk chop. And I'm thinking, they
didn't even know that it was like the Brave thing, right? For the Braves.
Exactly. So I got told, they came back up, higher ups came up to me, and they're like going, cut that shit out. You can do your whooping and hollering and all that stuff, but we don't need the tomahawk chop. And I was like, and I was thinking in my mind marketing, getting a little hand with the foam on it. And, I'm thinking, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Chris, I wanted to ask you, what is your earliest memory about wrestling,
Wow. Terry, that's a great question. And you're going to probably think this is an old Texas fable, kind of something you read in the books about Paul Bunyan and all that shit. When I was a kid, okay, I was born on February 10th in the middle of the snowstorm in Emerald, Texas. Anyway, they said it was going to snow 5 feet that night. Anyway, I was born. This is no bullshit. I was born at 7 o'clock on February 10th. I'm going to tell you what year I am, what year it was, because I'm way too old. But anyway, my dad was worried about the snow and all that other stuff. As soon as my mom gave birth to me, my dad was at the hospital. He took us with him to the sports arena in Amarillo. Now, you couldn't do that here in Amarillo, or you couldn't do that nowadays at all. Leave the hospital. They give you so many. Yeah, they had me. She had me. They stitched her up. They wrapped us both up, and we had to go to the sports arena because he had to go work, and he was scared that it was trapped in the snow. He couldn't leave.
Are you kidding me?
I swear to
Back
God.
then, women stayed in the hospital with their kids for a week or 5 days.
Exactly. We went that
Holy
night,
shit.
and so I was told that I went to the wrestling matches the day I was born. But my earliest memory of the business was probably, and this is no BS either, was probably when I was about 4 years old. My father he had this in I guess this was religion. My dad was religious, even though he didn't go to church. He always believed in God. He said that church didn't have anything to do with your beliefs. So he had this thing they call a medalla, and it's a round medallion with Mary on it, and it was made of gold. And my father, he would do 1 million push-ups, but I would sit on his back, and I remember he had his wrestling tights on and stuff, and getting sun out in the back, and he would be doing push-ups, and that medalla hitting the ground, and it hit him every time he did a push-up, and I would sit on his back and grab his neck, and I'd go up and down, up and down, up and down while he did his push-ups. But, I remember him doing that and us going to the wrestling matches, and actually Dory Funk Sr. holding me when I was a little kid. And that
you remember that?
Yes, I remember my dad handing me Dory Funk Sr. because he wore this hat and his hair was fuzzy. And I remember grabbing his head and rubbing his head, and he had this hat and the cowboy hat. But I remember a lot of memories from the days when I was a little kid. I remember going to the wrestling matches. I remember my father and my mother going to the NWA convention in Mexico City, and that was when I was about 6 years old. So between those 2 years, those 2 time limits, I would say between 4 and 6 years old. Those were my earliest memories. And my dad was on the board. My dad was on the board of the NWA at the time, and they had conventions in Mexico City and in Las Vegas. And they would go. Him and my mom would go every year. And boy, they were dressed up like Elvis and Priscilla. You know, they would have their bling on, and they would get off at the time at the airplanes that had the little escalator thing that came down, and they were sharp dressed and, you know, signing autographs that it came down the thing. And, you know, I mean, I knew at a very, very early age that my life was special. And that my father was able to give me that, you know, and I loved both of them more than anything for able to give me that in my life, because it's made a lot of difference. You know, I went through a lot of things in my life, and that just kind of kept me grounded of who I am, and that gave me the confidence of, you know, going out there and succeeding in everything that I try to do, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Bob has a question that he wants to ask you too, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple questions, Chris. You touched earlier about Braves and the the controversy at the time of the nickname. How do you feel about, and you know, of course, the Redskins is a big controversy right now about the Washington Redskins name. How do you feel about the use of Native Americans as mascots for sports teams?
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm all for it 100%. You know, if we lose the fact and the visuals of our Native heritage throughout the United States and what we were based on, we lose all trust in our country, because that's what we were based on. It was the Native American. And if we don't get that, you know, visual, or maybe hear something or whatever, see it out there in, you know, everyday life, and especially sports teams, you know, that keeps us alive. That is our heritage. That's like going, you know, when you go to England and nobody wants to mention anything about the Queen. I mean, we are built on our solid foundation that we believe in Native Americans, and it's not, you know, it's not a dishonor to do those things, because we're actually promoting who we are. We're promoting Americanism. That's where American natives came from. America is, you know, it's a Spanish word derived from natives themselves. So we are apt to do, you know, and see that we, you know, native. I wish that there was more. You know, I really do. I wish that, you know, that there wouldn't be, you know, such some protests against using mascots and promote. I mean, like my favorite hockey team is the Blackhawks. You know, and I've got a shirt. Jay had a shirt. You know, a hockey that. What was the referee? Young from Carolina. He played actually for the Blackhawks.
Tommy Young.
Tommy Young, yeah. He played for the Blackhawks at one time in his life. And he gave Jay a special shirt that he had from then, back in the day. I remember as a kid, and Jay cherished it the rest of his life. And, you know, to me, that iconic figure, whether it's a tomahawk, whether it's a profile, whether, you know, it's a feather, I think because our country is so unique, and you go all over the world. I've been in almost, you know, every civilized country out there, and people go berserk about Native Americans. We worked for a company, it was called Superstars of Wrestling or something like that, and actually it was Ted Petty, and I guess that was Rocco Rock of the Public Enemy. Ted Petty hooked up with us, and we got a tour over there, and there was a bunch of the boys on the bill. But anyway, we worked Berlin, and this was right like a year after the wall got torn down. So Mark and I were in Berlin, and we're like looking at a hotel, and the hotel we stayed was really nice. It was a Hilton right across from where Hitler ran all his commands. It was his office, and it's real gray there. They have no commercialism back then. You can see where mortar bullets had hit the walls of these big buildings and all this other stuff. Well, anyway, Mark and I were kind of like scared, like going, God, this is still Eastern Bloc. These people ain't gonna like us. So we got to the matches, and there was 28,000 people. That's the first time they ever seen wrestling ever, and a live event. So they had a good intro. As you went out the ring, they had the lights and they had fog machine and all this stuff. Well, we had our gimmicks on. I had my headdress on. I had all this stuff on, and I had a big old American flag, and it had Cochise on the front of it. So I'm like looking at Mark. I'm going, do I put the flag in the corner, and back here in the back, or do I take it out with me and all this stuff? So anyway, they introduced us and this and that, and I said, you know what? Fuck them. I'm from America. I don't really give a shit. And we busted through that curtain, and wow, I mean, just people stood up screaming. You thought we were Hogan or somebody in his prime. They busted out like you wouldn't believe. They cheered. They were, I mean, they stood up.
That's great.
When I waved that flag as I was coming out and coming down that aisle, that made me proud to be not only a Native American, but American all in all. It made me feel proud to be where I was from representing the United States and America. And
absolutely. And I'll tell you what, man, I agree totally on your opinion. And, I'm not, of course, a Native American, but I'm right with you. Bob, you got another question? I know we're pushing the count on time.
We are short on time. I got a question and then a request for you.
Sure.
I wanted to ask about Joe Scarpa played Chief Jay Strongbow for the longest time in WWF, however many W's there were back then, lots of them.
Right.
But obviously Joe is Italian, and a great majority of the guys who play Native Americans characters today are Hispanic and of little or no, they're not Native Americans. So I mean,
they're not Native American.
Yeah, does that rub you wrong? I mean, is that, or is it just
no?
They're a character and go with it. So,
well, how many people can you stay in this melting pot of today's society, and especially in America, that we're all 100% of something? I mean, really, can you? You can't. I mean, we're such a melting pot of a country. Somebody says, well, I ask people all the time. I asked this girl at this place I work, traveling around the country. I go, what nationality are you? And she said, I'm Taiwan, something, Chinese, and something else. I thought, God, you're Native American. She looked just like a Native American. And, but she was Heinz 57, like the rest of us. She was different nationalities. And to actually get somebody portrayed, look at Iron Eyes Cody. He was Italian. He didn't have a bit of Native American in him. But he portrayed that character. It made people cry when he seen pollution on the side of the highway.
Right.
And, be able to represent that in your character, tenfold, I believe it 100%. And so it doesn't really bother me unless you go on to, if you find somebody off the reservation, and, I'll tell you what, and a lot of people ask me, and I went back to college years after I got out of wrestling, and I actually have an associate's degree in architectural drafting and design, and I also have a bachelor's degree in business and a minor in Native American history.
Wow.
And we were done wrong. I mean, the Native Americans were done piss poorly. And the thing about it is they're suffering even today. And even though we talk about the pride and we talk about the Native Americans and we're happy and we say we're in that, if you go to some reservations, by God, you'll see the worst slums because of our country put us there.
Hey, man, the Native Americans, this was their land. We stole it.
Exactly.
We stole it.
Exactly. And you know what?
I know that other races have legitimate, gripes, but of all the Native Americans have the biggest gripe of anybody. We took their land. We put them on trains. We put them on these reservations, and we took their way of life away from them.
Exactly.
That's just
exactly
flat ass wrong.
Well, let's imagine, okay, somebody taking your property away and then puts you in someone's backyard to live. You know,
yeah,
you got
a lot of times
boundaries.
in a swamp or something you couldn't even grow anything on.
It's worthless land. I mean, up in and I could go on forever. There's a movement called the AIM movement back in 1971, up by the Black Hills in North Dakota. That Indian reservation at the time, a company called Kermit Petroleum actually went in and they did these core samples in the ground on the reservation. Reservation didn't want it, but it's big, big Corp America went in there, but they took these core samples out of the ground and they placed them, in piles by this river. Well, they started noticing all these people dying and being sick and all this other stuff. Well, there's radioactivity underneath the ground in some parts of the area, the country. They were making so much money off petroleum, nobody even gave a crap about the Indians. They let them die.
Right.
They let them die.
And the Black Hills were like one of the most holy places. Right.
But I mean, I'm sorry we got off on this tangent. But anyway, going back to the original question in about, people portraying, Native Americans. And I'll tell you, honest to God story. Joe Scarpa got over as Joe Scarpa. He was actually over for years. That guy got a rebirth. A lot of guys can't do that in this business. You can't start off as, as Doink the Clown and end up being, being somebody else, the Warrior or somebody like that. He got two lives out of the business. He was Joe Scarpa, then he became Jay Strongbow. People forgot him. And then when he put on the headdress, they didn't know who he was.
Right.
And he did represent the Native Americans very well and everything. On a personal level, I didn't particularly get along with him. And I'll just blurt this out, and then you guys can close the story and close the show or whatever. But when I was a kid, 18 years old, and I was so ambitious to get in the business early, young, and I worked, the WWE came to town, it was WWF back then, and they came to Amarillo, Texas, and my dad got me a spot to get looked at by the WWE in Amarillo, Albuquerque, and Lubbock. And it was a 3-day run. So anyway, when they came to, it was Albuquerque first, Lubbock, then Amarillo. Well, my dad was sick and he couldn't make it to the show in Albuquerque. So he sent me and I went, and I'm just a naive kid, but I've been working since I was 13 years old. So I go to the matches and I didn't act it. I wasn't prima donna and all this other stuff. So I go to the matches and everything and I walk in the building and Joe Scarpa's standing there with the rundown in his hand. And he comes looked at me and goes, "Who the fuck are you?" And I go, "I'm Chris Youngblood. I'm Chris Romero." He goes, looks around over my shoulder and looks like that. "Where the fuck's your dad at?" And I said, "My dad?" I go, "My dad's not working tonight. I'm working." I go, "My dad's sick at home." And then he goes, "Oh, geez." And he walked off. And I was just like, God, what an asshole. So I was like, okay. So anyway, I had a match that night with Barry Orton. But the strange thing about it is there's such a athletic commission in New Mexico that they went by rounds. So we had to work probably 10 minutes, and then we had to stand in our corner for like 30 seconds or something. It was funky. So I'm working against Barry, and Barry's going, he's talking me out in the ring. He's going, "Damn, you're a hell of a worker." He goes, "You're just like Jay and Mark." He goes, "God, you're real fluid. You can listen good, all this other shit." We went out there before Andre and somebody else, and and Bundy, I think, and we tore the fucking place down at Tingley Coliseum in Albuquerque. I come back to the dressing room, and Joe Scarpa, Strongbow, goes, "What the fuck did you do, kid?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Nobody goes out there and gets over before any of the other guys, and it started in on me. And I go, "What are you talking about?" I go, "Barry's the one who ran the show." I go, "He just had some talent out there. We just went out there and we tore the house down." And he didn't like that. He didn't like it a bit. And the fact of the matter is, he was wanting to push this guy Gator Wolf, which was a Native American, but had zero talent. And the guy, I was partial, half Native American and half Spanish. But yet the guy, just because he wanted to have a spot in the position, he was detrimental to me not ever getting in the WWE. And then by the time he left the scene and he did his thing, it was too late. I was already wanting to get out of the business. I'd been going to Japan, making tons of money over there, and, working a different style, more of a shoot style. But, I'm proud that the guy represented Native Americans and everything. But I'll tell you, on the end of a personal issue, I really didn't care for him. And I'm sad that he's gone. He was a great wrestler. He was legendary. But to me, what happened to me, and I never ever got my shot and my chance with WWE. And and Terry knows this because I can work a little bit. I probably could have got a spot on there.
Work a little bit. You could work your ass off, and you should have had a spot on there, even though you were 8 years old, man. They could have developed you. And, you and Mark both were, like I said before, y'all were phenomenal workers. Yeah. And you could have been just as much as Jay.
I got fucked out of my spot because of it.
But anyway, I'm not going to cry.
I'm not going to cry.
I wanted to talk to you about Japan. There was a lot of other things that I wanted to talk to you about and questions I wanted to ask you, but this has been great. And Chris, I want to have you back on at a later date because your stories are, you've had me interested and laughing, and I know our listeners are going to love it.
It's true stuff.
I know they are.
I talk from the heart, dude.
I know you do, man. I've known you. Like I said, I always liked you. Chris, I can't thank you enough.
Same here, bro. I enjoy it.
Thank you, Chris. Great having you
on.
Let
me tell Chris real quick. Bob was with the GWF when probably you were there. Bob Hazelwood, he helped when Joe Pedicino was there. Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
I was a gopher. They called me assistant producer, but I was a gopher. I have no delusions. I rang the bell a few nights on non-TV taping shows. But
you know what? Years before that, I want to ask you a quick question. Years before that, I was living in Dallas with Mark when I first got in the business. I think it was like 85, might have been 86. But anyway, Joe Pedicino did this show, and I think he was one of the first guys to syndicate something, but he had this show out of Atlanta, and it was like 2 or 3 hours that he showed wrestling from all over the world.
Yeah, wrestling block that he and Bonnie used to do on the TBS, or it wasn't even on TBS, it was on like Channel 5 or some crap out of Atlanta,
but it came into Dallas. And I used to enjoy that because I would see guys that I never, that you never seen on TV. I got to see guys that
it was unique because it brought in shows from all across the country, not just the local guys.
Yeah,
it was really interesting.
It was.
In fact, in some ways, it might have been the precursor of the WWE Network.
Exactly,
I'm sure Joe's probably going to want some. Joe's going to want some residuals now.
Probably. What was the deal? Is he still married to Bonnie Blackstone? Was that a gimmick? Or?
Yes. No, they're still married.
No,
they're still married, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember them. He was. I enjoyed. When we worked for him, it was funny because we'd always have to stay at the Roadway Inn right there by the Trinity River, looking downtown Dallas, and it was funny. We went every week there, so we got to be regulars at the hotel. So the lady had a key made. It said Youngbloods on it. It was our room key.
That's when you know you're over, right? That's when you know you're over.
Chris Youngblood is retired from the wrestling business, but he still puts on seminars from time to time. He's living the good life in the Pacific Northwest. You can follow Chris on Twitter at ChrisRomero15. Our next episode will feature superstar Bill Dundee. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe, like this video, and most importantly, spread the word. For Wrestling World Domination Remastered, this is Bob Hazelwood reminding you, be good to each other.